Well, here with Ezekiel 9, we're going to continue the revelation from Ezekiel 8 that he has been seeing and to get some more information from this revelation. So, verse 1, he cried also in mine ears with a loud voice, saying, cause them that have charge over the city to draw near, even every man with his destroying weapon in his hand. So he's bring these people in, bring their weapons with them, basically. And behold, 6 men came from the way of the higher gate, which lieth toward the north, and every man a slaughter weapon in his hand. And one man among them was clothed with linen, with a writer's inkhorn by his side, and they went in and stood beside the brazen altar. Now, this isn't Ezekiel literally asking the people, because remember, this revelation started with the princes of Judah sitting around him in his own house in Babylon to hear to talk with him, and then he has this revelation. This is still that vision of Jerusalem that he's seeing here, basically. So he's seeing that this is the personage that's with Ezekiel is saying, standing next to him, saying, do this. And so now we are seeing these 6 men come into Jerusalem with their destroying weapon in their hands. Okay. They all could be the same type of weapon. These could be different. In a way, you could think of this kind of like, if you're familiar with the Lord of the Rings, the Nazgul, the ring race that come in on Weathertop, probably something kind of like that, but maybe not quite as dreary and opposing. But realize what we're seeing is this vision of destroying angels coming to Jerusalem. So these 6 men are there, they're clothed with linen, and a writer's inkhorn was on his side of this one. And they went in and stood beside the brazen altar. So they're in the temple area. Verse 3, and the glory of God of Israel was gone up from the cherub, whereupon he was, to the threshold of the house. And he called to the man clothed with linen, which had the writer's inkhorn by his side. So the glory of God would have been gone from the cherub. Now the cherubs were the ones that were sitting, the winged cherubs were sitting on the Ark of the Covenant. They were sitting there because that's the throne of God, the judgment seat, basically. And so that's where it's like God's there and he's calling out to this one destroying angel, basically. Verse 4, and the Lord said unto him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. So this is not marking the wicked people. This is marking the righteous people. These are the people that are crying because of the abominations. They realize how bad society's gotten, and they feel terrible about how bad society's gotten, but what do they do about it? They want to do what's right, but society's gone so bad that they're struggling with that. Mark the righteous on their foreheads. Okay, and we can think about this in kind of an opposite way. In the book of Revelations, we hear the idea of the mark of the beast on people, marked on their foreheads. That's the mark of the beast, or a mark of wickedness on the people, indicate who's wicked. Now, in Ezekiel's time, we're indicating who's righteous, basically. So this is going to be a different challenge than what we have in the latter days. Let's see, Freeman's book, Manners and Customs of the Bible, he talked about this mark. He said, this mark was to be put on these faithful ones for their protection when the faithless were to be destroyed. It showed that they belonged to God. The allusion is to a very ancient custom. In Egypt, a runaway slave was freed from his master if he went to the temple and gave himself up to the god, receiving certain marks upon his person to denote his consecration to the deity there worshipped. Cain had a mark put on him for his protection, as an evidence of God's promise to spare his life, notwithstanding his wickedness. That was, if you remember, in Cain, he was marked so everyone realized that's Cain. We're not supposed to kill him, basically. To this day, all Hindus have some sort of mark upon their forehead, signifying their consecration to their gods. Several passages in the book of Revelation represent the saints as having a mark on their foreheads. The followers of the beast are also said to be marked in the forehead or in the hands. The Romans marked their soldiers in the hands and their slaves in the forehead. The woman in scarlet whom John saw had a name written on her forehead. So there's a lot of these ideas in history, this concept of putting the name on the forehead. So we see this idea of having a name, have something that distinguishes you from everybody else. And that's what we're seeing here in Ezekiel, is this mark. So this destroying angel is going to go put a mark on the foreheads of all those who need to survive. We could also look at this from the standpoint of the mark of the lamb's blood on the door, the pieces of the door frame in the time of Moses when he was getting the people out of Egypt. That marked, anybody who had that mark, the destroying angel passed by their home. So these people, the righteous, are going to be marked. So as the destroying angels consume Jerusalem and the people, they will survive. So probably Jeremiah, Barak, the Ethiopian gentleman that helped Jeremiah out, and others were marked. Gedaliah and all some of those other people there that survived. So that's where they're at here, basically. So these, if you think about it, these are people that are crying out. They're sorrowful because of the sins of the people. So they're not sad because they can't do sin and still be in good station with God. They're sad because of the people going against God. So this is more of a godly sorrow we see in these people, basically, that are going to be marked. Now, also in this, the Old Testament study manual had something to say. They said, none were to be slain who are marked on the forehead. This passage shows that even in war, plagues, and starvation, the Lord can preserve whom he will and leave the rest to die. In the great destructions in the Americas before Christ's visit, though thousands were killed, the more righteous were spared. Maybe these destroying angels did that among them, the Nephites. So here's the ones to leave alive. The rest are expendable. We can get rid of them. Even though there will be martyrs and other exceptions, the saints of this day have a promise that generally the righteous will be preserved in the tribulations to come. So that's talking about our day and age. So what could we see as a mark? Maybe it's temple garments. The idea of standing in holy places could be, if you stand here, you're going to be fine. If you're worthy to be there, you'll be okay. That could be something as well. Continuing on with this, to a great extent, the preservation of the righteous is a natural expectation, since they follow inspired counsel by which they are led to make choices favorable to their well-being. It is not just association with God's kingdom that preserves individuals. It is the individual righteousness. In fact, the Lord has reserved his most severe judgments for those who profess his name but do not obey him. So realize, just because you're baptized doesn't mean you're saved. Just because you pronounce Christ as your Lord doesn't mean you're saved. It's your righteousness. It's your path to Christ, your relationship with him that makes the difference. So that's an individual basis, not a collective basis. So if you act righteous but aren't, that's even worse, basically. Orson Pratt said, where shall these great and severe judgments begin? Upon what people does the Lord intend to commence this great work of vengeance? Upon the people who profess to know his name and still blaspheme it in the midst of his house. They are the ones designated for some of the most terrible judgments of the latter days. So that's the people who are acting religious but aren't religious. They're the ones who are going to have the bigger problems and challenges. We're seeing that kind of separation of the wheat and tares. That's probably a similar connection with that's going on, basically, that they are being winnowed out and challenges and things are happening. and to determine who's really righteous and who's really not, basically. So anyways, back to Ezekiel here. Verse 5, and to the others he said in mine hearing, go ye after him through the city, and smite. Let not your eye spare, neither have ye pity. So the one is going to go mark the righteous, and the other 5 are to basically follow after him, and if there's no mark on them, take him out. Verse 6, slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children and women, but come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. So they began at the ancient men which were before the house. So God is starting at the cleansing of his house and going out from there. This is still a pattern we see in the latter days. God is going to cleanse his house, his church, if you will. The membership is going to go through some hard, challenging times to prove, are you really following God, or are you just pretending to follow God because it's a social normal thing to do, but you really want to do something else? I think possibly COVID had part of that, this whole idea of home-centered church. It's easier to be less active because there's less societal structure to keep you a member of the church. You have to be more individually connected than ever before. You have to be more on purpose with your testimony and your faith than ever before. It's not about building a structure and having society match that structure to help you and make it easy for you to be righteous and be a member. It is about realizing that all that's gone the other direction. Society has gone bad. Society is not helping anymore. Now it's you on your individual efforts. And now it's that separating out. Who's really going to do the come follow me lessons? Who's really going to study the scriptures and pray to God on their own? Versus who are those who wait to go to Sunday school to do anything religious in their week? Big separation. That's kind of this idea conceptually that's going on here in Ezekiel. Verse 7, and he said unto them, defile the house, and fill the courts with the slain, go ye forth. And they went forth and slew in the city. And it came to pass, while they were slaying them, and I was left, that I fell on my face and cried and said, ah, Lord God, wilt thou destroy all the residue of Israel in thy pouring out of thy fury upon Jerusalem? So while the 6 destroying angels are out doing their job, Ezekiel's still at the temple, and he's crying out to God, pleading for what's going to happen, basically. Verse 9, and then he said unto me, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceeding great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perverseness. For they say, the Lord hath forsaken the earth, and the Lord seeth not. So the people are saying, basically, we're having hard times. We're struggling. The nature's not working with us. We're trying to, get gods to help us to have water and moisture, and we're getting droughts and other problems and things like that, basically. And they believe God's not paying attention to them, basically. Verse 10, he is paying attention to them, but he's limited in helping them because they're not repenting. Verse 10, and as for me also, mine eye shall not spare, neither will I have pity, but I will recompense their way upon their head. So again, I'm executing justice. I have to execute justice. To be fair, I can't just let them off the hook because I want to let them off the hook. They have to pay the price for what the choices are that they've made, basically. Verse 11, and behold, the man clothed with linen, which had the inkhorn by side, reported the matter, saying, I have done as thou hast commanded me. So there's return and report. He went out, did it all, and came back, basically. Now let's jump over to our next chapter as we continue on with Ezekiel's revelations.